CBSE Board, Class 11, History, Chapter 2, Part 28, Audio by Renee Matthew. When we talk about the Turkish slaves who were known as Ghulam, they were purchased in the markets for the courts of the caliphs and sultans. And there was a way in which they were expected to behave with the higher aristocratic people. They were not expected to have freedom when they were purchased. So just like goods, they were purchased by the caliphs and sultans. We need to talk about the fiscal system which brought about a lot of changes in the economic pattern of the Arab Sultan Empire, especially regarding the income and expenditure of the state, which also dealt with the market exchange. This particular system, the fiscal system, increased the importance of money in the central Islamic lands. Coins of gold, silver, copper. All these coins were known as fulus. And even now in the Middle Eastern parts we call it fulus. They were minted and circulated, especially in bags that were sealed by money changers. And from these bags, they used to take the coins and they used to circulate it to buy goods and services. So from where did gold come? Gold came from Africa, Sudan in Africa, silver from Central Asia, and that was from Zarafshan Valley. Lot of precious metals and coins were also a part. It was also dug out, which came from Europe. And that was also used to pay the trade with the East. So gold, silver, copper, these were the three metals that were used to pay these people for goods and services, and how they used it to trade and also carry out commerce. You can see the pictures of all the coins and everything which has been collected over the years, and how they have played a very important part in trade and commerce, which was carried with the other parts of the country. Now we need to see a few interesting points on the holy book of the Muslims, the Quran. The Quran is a book in Arabic. It is written in Arabic and it is divided into 114 chapters. The chapters are known as surahs and they are arranged in descending order of length, the shortest being the last. So according to the length of the chapters, they are arranged. The shortest will definitely be the last. The only exception to this to this particular rule which states that it is arranged in descending order of length. The only exception is that the first surah is a short prayer. The first one is a short prayer. It is supposed to come in the last, but that is a short prayer. Al-Fatiha or opening, like most of the great books will have an opening to the God. Okay, so this is known as Al-Fatiha. So as per the Muslim tradition, the Quran is a collection of messages. A lot of messages are there, revelations, a kind of vision from God, and it is expectation of how people are supposed to live on earth. So these are revelations or messages from God which is sent to Prophet Muhammad. We saw that Prophet Muhammad himself said that he is the messenger of God. So it was messages, it was Lord of revelation which were sent by God to the Prophet, and that was done between 610 and 632. First it was received in Mecca and then in Medina. So the task of segregating it and compiling these revelations was completed sometime in 650. So the revelations were received between 610 and 632. But it was a huge task to compile it, and that was done in 650. So just like how we have got the other holy books, the oldest complete Quran, that is after they collected everything, they had to compile it, I told you. So the first compiled version is actually the one that we have today, dates from the 9th century. The oldest copy that we have dates from the 9th century. So we can say that the compilation was over by this time. The complete thing was done by this time. There were a lot of fragments that the people had to collect. A lot of old fragments were there, and the earliest or the oldest fragments were engraved on the rock, dome of the rock, and also on the coins in the 7th century, because they didn't have any other medium to engrave all these fragments. So it was done on two main things, dome of the rock and on coins. The use of the Quran as a source material, because Quran is used as a material, a resource from which you can study a lot in history, especially for the history of early Islam, has posed some problems. There are some problems that they faced when Quran was considered as a source material. Source material means from where you get a lot of resources, a lot of information. The first problem is that it is a scripture. And it is a text which has got religious prominence, right? So because of that, when people studied history, they said, how can we rely on the Quran? First problem was it was a text, or it is a text with religious authority. And many theologians, people who study the scripture, people who study religion, generally believed that as a speech of God, Kalam Allah. It is the speech of God, it is message from God, and it has to be understood literally, not metaphorically. Direct meanings are there. But there are a lot of rationalists, people who think logically and also those who use reasoning power among these theologians who said that interpretation of Quran is something else, not literally. Why should we have it literally? All these questions and criticism came because a few people had wider interpretation. Now we cannot say that literal meaning is totally wrong or metaphorical meaning is totally wrong. Indirect meanings and direct meanings. Of course, interpretations become wider when you have a profound study. Even this textbook, when you start studying, when you read it for the first time, you may just understand few points. But when you keep reading it, you will get into the depth of the text, right? The same thing applies to any text or scripture. Wider interpretations will be received as a learner. So in 1833, what happened? Abbasid Caliph al-Mamun, he's a person, imposed the view. He had a view that in a trial of faith or mihna, that the Quran is God's creation rather than his speech. It is God's creation, direct creation of God, and it is not his speech. That was the finding of Abbasid Caliph al-Mamun. You can see all the pictures that is put up here, and the content is. So that was the first problem. It was a religious authoritative book. What is the second problem? The second problem was that Quran very often speaks in metaphors. Metaphors are indirect meanings. And unlike the Old Testament from the Bible, it does not narrate events. In the Bible, it is like it keeps on narrating events. So anybody who reads the Bible will understand that there is a sequence of events like how you read a story. There is a plot sequence. You'll be able to understand the sequence, the after effects, and why something happened. All these things are discovered in the Bible and the Old Testament, but that is not the pattern of Quran. It's totally different. It often speaks in metaphors where you have to really interpret and study each line. It is not very easy to understand. So a lot of scholars were there, Islamic scholars. They had to make sense of many verses with the help of hadith. Hadith, interpretations were written. So many hadith were written to help the reading of the Quran. People studied, people interpreted, and they had a lot of, it's not exactly paraphrasing, but deep, profound understanding of the Quran was actually made. What about the law? So that's it about the Quran. What about the law that the Islamic Arab world actually had in those days? So before the law took its final form, the Sharia was adjusted to take into account the customary laws. Lot of customary laws were there, and even now Muslims follow it very strictly. And the name for customary law is urf of the various regions, as well as the laws of the state on political and social order. So apart from the government rules, apart from the rules that were put up by the government on both political and social order, there were some customary laws that the people had to follow. And the name for that is urf. The name for political and social order is siyasa, sharia. So sharia is the common name that you have for it. The law, the customary laws. Very important point. Now, what are these customary laws? They, however, retained their strength in large parts of the countryside. People were very prominent. They were very keen in following these laws. And sometimes they continued to bypass the Sharia. Sometimes they did not even follow. Some of them did not follow it, especially in terms of inheritance of land by daughters. They faced a lot of problem regarding that when it came to daughters. And in most of the regimes, the ruler and the officials dealt routinely. They had a meticulous way of dealing with matters, especially when it came to asset in land, when it came to law, when it came to state security, and they also selected cases. They did not deal with all the cases. It was done meticulously. They had a planned strategy also, but they used to select the cases to the Qasi, that is a judge. Some of it were not even brought to the law, right? Some of it were brought, some was just avoided like that. Now, who is the Qasi? Qasi was appointed by the state, so you can see that a lot of political and social interference is there. In each city or locality, you have a Qasi, and he often acted as an arbitrator in disputes, a kind of mediator, who had to be diplomatic. He was expected to be diplomatic, but we don't know what really happened. And he was not expected to be strict enforcer of the Sharia. He had to mediate, he had to moderate, and he had to also have a diplomatic stand in any dispute. So there were a lot of religious-minded people in medieval Islam, and they were known as Sufis. They actually had a deeper, or they wanted a deeper and more personal knowledge of God, more than the metaphors and all these things that they studied. They wanted to go in deep about the knowledge of God, and that was through asceticism and mysticism. These two terms are very important. Asceticism is something which deals with the belief. It is of higher order, very strict order, profound thinking, deep thinking, and the name is Rabbaniya. Mysticism is mystery. Sometimes we say that, oh, it is a mystery. How can we believe that? We cannot explain certain things, right, in life. So they were more interested in such kind of things, and they thought that if they had a deeper and more personal knowledge of God, they will be able to explain all these things. So, when the society gave itself to material pursuits and pleasures, the society was more interested in luxury. They were very interested in lot of pleasures of the world. The Sufis wanted to renounce the world. They wanted to just give up on the worldly pleasures and focus mainly on God and His message. World is suhd, and rely on God alone, tawakkul. So Sufis were very conservative, and also they were profound thinkers compared to any other religious believers. So what happened in the 8th and 9th centuries? Ascetic inclinations were elevated to the higher stage of mysticism. Asceticism is the belief, the divine belief. So that got a prominent position, especially it was taken to the pedestal stand in the society to study with mysticism, tasawwuf, by the ideas of pantheism and love. So people started encouraging mysticism more by the ideas of pantheism and love. Now, what is pantheism? Pantheism is the idea of oneness of God, that God is one. You don't have to believe in so many gods. One God created the world, also about His creation, which implies that the human soul must definitely be united with its maker. So everybody, we all are God's creation. That is what pantheism says, and we have to be united with God. That is what they propagated. So unity with God, how can you achieve this unity with God? It can only be achieved through an intense love for God. Ishq. You must be really familiar with this word. So pantheism and love. So this was told, how to achieve unity with God was told. This particular idea was given by the woman saint, Rabia of Basra. She preached all these things through her poems. That is, intense love for God was expressed through poems. This is one depiction of the woman saint, Rabia of Basra. There's another person, his name was Bayazid Bistami. He was an Iranian Sufi. He was a Sufi follower, and he was the first to teach the importance of submerging the self. That is, you have to completely dissolve yourself. That is yourself. You have to surrender yourself. Self, the word is fana, in God. Completely dissolve yourself and surrender yourself in God. That was the idea which was propagated by Bayazid Bistami. Sufis generally used musical concerts, and the name is Sama. Musical concerts to express themselves, and that was the induced ecstasy, love, a kind of happiness, joy which cannot be expressed, a transcendent joy, right? And also to propagate, to induce emotions of love and passion. When you listen to a music, you have more feelings. It is very expressive, right? So to induce love and passion, they always communicated through what? Through musical concerts. So Sufism is open to all. They are very open-minded people. Though they were profound thinkers, they were open-minded regardless of religious affiliation, status and gender. They did not even care about the religious affiliation. They did not care about the status in the society or the gender. All these 3 points are very important. Another person, Dulnun Misri. This is Dulnun Misri. His grave can be seen near the pyramids in Egypt. Very important point. He declared before the Abbasid Caliph, his name is Al-Mutawakkil. Before this particular Caliph, he declared that he learned true Islam from an old woman and true chivalry from a water carrier. So he shows the qualities of humbleness. He learned true Islam from old women and true chivalry from a water carrier. This phrase and quote is very important. So he said that you have to make religion very personal. You should have the passion, because all these people had passion, and that is how they were able to follow the right track of religion. So Sufism gained popularity because of their personalized learning, personalized passion in learning, and it was not institutional. Institutional means they will always have a propagation. They will give importance to the institution that they believe in. It was not like that. It was personal. It varied from one person to another, but still they were profound thinkers. Because of that, it gained a lot of popularity. And it also posed a challenge to Orthodox Islam. There were people who were really conservatives than this. They were very, very conservatives. But Sufi people, they were really open-minded. We saw that even now, that they were open-minded, irrespective of religious affiliation, status, and gender. So because of that, people started moving to the beliefs in Sufism. Because when you become too conservative, it is very difficult to openly believe God. And God is always free with His creation, right? So why do you have to suffocate and believe in God, was the idea. There was another vision of God which people propagated, and also of the universe. See, many reformers were also living during this period, not just Muslims and the people who posed threats, like all the people who wanted war. Islam was also propagating peace. It also wanted people to put an end to all these things. So there were a lot of alternating vision of God, especially of the universe, and that was also developed by the Islamic philosophers. The alternate vision of God, which was totally different from what the others believed.